Undertale, Undertale, Undertale. My, did this little indie title grew exponentially in fame during late 2015, receiving a colossal cult following right after its launch. Not one individual who spent an adequate amount of time on the internet during its peak lived on without hearing about it. Many factors played into making it a cult classic, but none made a larger impact than the characters. Almost all of them, except for Mr. Disgusting Legs here, left a positive impression on players. Two in particular stood out from the crowd more than the rest, those being none other than the Skeleton Brothers, the lazy laid-back Sans, and the flamboyant Papyrus. Don't let their initial bare bones impression mesmerize you, for within the depths of their hollow bony bodies lie some fascinating layers of references and similarities to other outside forces. Crikey, I just want to know the similarities they possess with other energy sources within the Milky Way. What are the blueprints behind their design and development? Shall we find out? Let's answer one question. Who are Sans and Papyrus? To start it off, we have the laid-back, intellectual, robust shorty, Sans. His name is a reference to the font style of Comic Sans. Comic as to reflect his comical personality and using bad skeleton-related puns. And Sans too, well, his first name. The word Sans itself means without in the English language, and if one looks at Sans' battle stats, he has practically no HP and no defense points, possibly referencing the definition of his name. All of his dialogue is written in lowercase Comic Sans, likely reflecting on his short, bulging nature. If only the bastard wasn't so lazy. He would be more fit if he wasn't surrounded by hot dogs. Oh yes, this line was actually a reference to furries. Okay, now let's take a look at his younger, taller brother, Papyrus. This flamboyant bone structure is named after the font of the same name. The slender text which matches the appearance of Mr. Sir Skeleton here. In fact, Papyrus himself speaks with the font that he is named after. When killing Papyrus, he says, "Alas, poor Papyrus," possibly referencing William Shakespeare's Hamlet. More specifically, the famous scene where Hamlet talks to the skull and says, "Alas, poor Yorick." Design-wise, the marking found in Papyrus's chest plate are identical to the ones found in Starman from the game Earthbound. Now going back to the Skeleton Brothers' names. They are a reference to the webcomic known as Helvetica. The comic is centered around a skeleton named Helvetica, and if one looks closely to the different fonts in Microsoft Word or any other program with text options, one will find a font named Helvetica, and thus making it a comic about a skeleton named after a font. And looking back at Sans and Papyrus, they are skeletons named after fonts, making it very clear that the Helvetica comic is a heavy inspiration for the creation of Undertale's skeleton duo. In the graphic design field, Papyrus and Comic Sans are both widely considered to be unoriginal, mediocre, poorly designed, informal, and overused fonts. Similarly, Helvetica is a mediocre, overused font. Now let's dive into an extra character, the mysterious W.D. Gaster. His name is presumed to be a portmanteau of the fonts Wingdings and Aster. And more on that, Aster is also short for Asteraceae, a family of flowers which includes daisies, sunflowers, and buttercups. And throughout the game, there are many locations filled with flowers resembling those of daisies and buttercups. His name has a mirror-like resemblance with the Swedish word Gast, which is a term for a kind of ghost. This is made even more noticeable by its plural derivative, Gaster. W.D. Gaster shares some visual similarities with Yuboa from Yume Nikki and the character Whiteface from the horror game I'm Scared. It's impressive to see how one man was able to design a game single-handedly and use various clever sources. But I am quite disappointed with the discarding of the other skeleton brother. Sans? Papyrus? Meet your never-existing brother, Roman.